I went to Death Valley the end of February. Along the way, I stopped for the night in Tonopah, Nevada to recharge the car's battery and myself. It's not the thriving mining town that it once was, but neither is it a ghost town. The town is very proud of the fact that America's first stealth aircraft was secretly based nearby for nearly 10 years. A mural in town memorializes the death of those who died in a mine fire back in 1911, and the heroism of one man who attempted to save many of his fellows. There's also a statue of Big Bill by the post office. There are a couple of old hotels in town that have been restored, but kept to look much as they would have looked in their glory days. The Mizpah Hotel, and the Belvedere Hotel. I really like these old ceilings. The town tries to keep its Old West ambience. Above the town is a mining museum. Inside, they have samples of various minerals and old mining equipment. Outside, there are displays and interpretive signs. Doesn't look like a fun way to live. At least not by modern standards. Outside, there are still old mining structures and old mining equipment. It was a beautiful day. Tonopah is a dark sky site, so they've made this spot outside of town for night photography. It even has a statue of E.T. I stopped in Beatty, Nevada before entering the park and spied some of the wild burros of Beatty. Now we head down into Death Valley. Coming up on the right is a kiosk giving information about the valley, and in the distance we're starting to see views of the salt flats and maybe even Badwater way off in the distance. I'll be staying at the ranch at Death Valley. 190 feet below sea level. It's laid out like a little village. It's owned by Xanterra, not the Park Service. It has a couple of restaurants, a general store, there's also an ice cream shop, and the Desert Outfitters. I'm staying in one of these duplex cottages. There's an outdoor museum with mining equipment and other artifacts of a bygone era. But I zoomed in on this. Know what it is? It's a printing press. My dad had one very much like it, but his was kept in much better condition than this. This roller rolls over the platen on which the printer has put some ink. It then rolls the ink down over the type, which is here, and then there the paper goes. Then those jaws close and it makes an impression. Keep your fingers out of the way. I drove down to Badwater, 282 feet below sea level. How much is that? Well, here I pan up to a marker on the side of the cliff that shows you just how far down you are. I didn't walk out onto the salt flat. I've done that many times before and didn't feel the need to do it again. So I drove on and drove into Artist Drive, a one-way road through some stunning geologic scenery. The one thing I like about the desert is it's like looking at the earth without its clothes on. You can really see what lies beneath. I park and get out for a closer look. I love the colors. You can easily see why they call it Artist's Drive. In the formation's Artist Palette. I wanted to hike in Golden Canyon. When I arrived, I found there was a naturalist there about to lead a hike to discuss the geology of the area. So I joined the group. I won't try to give you all of his talk, but a part of it that I found very interesting.
That are coming through and pushing boulders, and then those boulders coalesce together into rock. And then as we've been going up, we've got into finer sandy layers, which are probably more consistent streams and rivers. And then at the last stop, we got into some very silty stuff like this, that with wave patterns. That was probably a freshwater lake at some point. And this is where I'd like to put together the last chapter of the rocks here, because we have all sorts of stuff that's stuck in between the layers here. It's not a clean block of rock here. So you have all this crystalline stuff that's stuck in between. And this, does anyone want to take a guess as to what it could be? It's something that we see in the bottom of the valley today. Oh. Yeah, so we're seeing evaporites here, seeing salts and gypsums. And so what we're seeing here is that lake drying up. And so as we go through time, we've seen, I got it. Okay. We've seen that lake form. We've seen critters kind of assemble around the sides of the lake, and now we're seeing that lake dry up. And so what we're seeing here is, almost this shift in climate, this sort of curve in the climate, where we're going from very dry, arid conditions with those flash floods, up to the lake, sort of more wet and mild conditions, and then finally we're seeing that lake dry up. And then the last chapter, the most recent chapter of Death Valley's history, is written in the cliffs above us. So this is the last time I'm going to ask, but what do we see in the cliffs above us here?
Another dark stone at the top.
Exactly. So we have a layer of dark stone at the top. Erosion has been kind to us and has actually knocked one of the pieces of the cliff up there to right in front of us, to this little bit of rock right here. And what do we notice about this block?
Composite.
Yep, so horizontal kind of lines. And then what is it made of?
Other rocks.
It's made of other rocks. It's a conglomerate again. So that's what we're seeing in this section of this entire hike that we've done. We've gone from flash floods to lake, and then a dry lake bed here, and then finally, as we get to the most recent rock layers, we're seeing flash floods again. We're seeing these big bouldery rocks, the product of all of these floods coming down these canyons. And so we're seeing, we've probably covered about 1 million years of time. And this conglomerate layer that makes up Red Cathedral basically brings us up to the modern day. But just by looking at the clues in the rocks, we've been able to piece together just about 1 million years of time and see this big shift in the climate that happened over 1 million years. But that 1 million years is nothing compared to the total history of the park. So we have rocks going back almost 1.7 billion years in Death Valley. So if the 1 million years that we covered today was just about 1/4 of an inch.
Here we see the Red Cathedral formation that the ranger was talking about. The trail continues up to the base of the Red Cathedral formation, but I instead took a trail off to the right that would have led me up to Zabriskie Point. I didn't go that far, however. I just went to this view of Manly Beacon. The trail would wind its way around the beacon and up to Zabriskie Point. Heading back down, I see more of the colorful rocks that we saw at Artist Drive. I headed up to Zabriskie Point to take in the gorgeous views. Here we can catch a glimpse of Manly Beacon from the other direction. Then I headed a little ways down the trail into Golden Canyon. I drove up to Titus Canyon to take a look and found this healthy creosote bush in an otherwise barren landscape. The wash was loose cobble, not my favorite walking surface, so I didn't go very far. This had once been a canyon you could drive down, but since some flash flooding, it's been closed. The Park Service seems to be interested in reopening it eventually. I like these rock formations. I found them very interesting. It would be nice to take a nature walk with a geologist here. I wonder who lives in here. It's getting late and time to head over to the sand dunes, a place I always go to when I'm in Death Valley. The shadows are getting long and it's time to set up my tripod. I've come to try my hand at some star trails. Unfortunately, a lot of other people have decided to come here and look at the stars, and there will be a lot of light pollution in this otherwise dark sky location. But this was the best I could do. Leaving the park, I took a side trip to the Mosaic Canyon Trail. I don't think I've ever been on this trail before, and I wasn't able to go as far as I had wanted. But it's another place with very interesting geologic formations. Another place I'd like to visit with a geologist. It's this that gives the place its name. All these bits and pieces of rock fused together. Its inclusions. When I got to this point, I decided to turn around. It's not impassable, but not wise for an old lady traveling alone.